Welcome back to the Elected News Election Eve Super Special. I'm your host, Luke Radel. My first guest tonight is the co-founder of Punchbowl News and a frequent contributor to MSNBC and NBC News. Please welcome Jake Sherman. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for doing this.
Of course,
I really appreciate it.
Sorry, the backdrop is not any better here, but
oh no, you're totally good.
Okay, cool.
Hard at work, I understand.
Yeah, yep.
And I expressed this to you in the email, but I'm a huge Punchbowl fan. I was looking for my
I appreciate
hat to put
that
on, but I couldn't find it. But
all good, man.
Huge fan.
Yeah, well, thank you for reading. I appreciate that. This is Max Cohen. Max works with us at Punchbowl.
Yeah, indeed, so I know that
he's here, and Christian, who also works with us, is somewhere here, but not next to me.
Rachel, actually,
he's not next to me at the moment.
Let's get into it because I have a lot of things to ask you about, and I know you have.
Cool.
Probably.
No, I just have to go. Yeah, I have time, but I mean, I don't have like 6 hours, but I have time.
See, that would be fun to hang out with you for 6 hours, but I understand. Let me pull up my questions here. So there's a lot happening on Capitol Hill. Is probably how every conversation about Capitol Hill usually starts. But let's start with last night the Biden town hall. A lot of discussion about the negotiations on the Build Back Better bill, Manchin and Sinema. What is the latest on what that package is looking like? It came down quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's come down from depends where you started, right? It was initially going to be between 6 and 10 trillion. Then it was 3.5 trillion. And I guess it was never actually going to be 6 and 10 trillion, but came down from 3.5 trillion to probably somewhere, in the neighborhood of 1.6 to 2 trillion, I guess is probably about right. Listen, we expect to vote next week now. As we reported this morning, the White House is very eager to get a vote before the president goes to Rome and Scotland, I think at the end of next week or early the week after. So all that said, it'll be a huge accomplishment. I think next week is going to be extraordinarily interesting. They're going to try to push this through next week, and I'm skeptical that they'll be able to push them both through next week. But I think infrastructure is probably could probably get through next week.
Wasn't there a lot of talk though about how the progressives wanted to get both through at the same time? And so, do you think? That
I think that was mostly, I think that was the vibe then. I have to think that if the president put in some elbow grease, so to speak, that he could get infrastructure next week. I'm not positive about that, but if he makes the case, listen, you need to give me something to show some motion, to show some movement before I go away to a climate convention, a climate conference, then that's possible. So I think that could happen.
Is there also a possibility though that if the infrastructure does pass and then later on we get a shrunken Build Back Better bill that has climate provisions taken out of it that Joe Manchin doesn't support, has other things taken out, corporate tax rates on billionaire or that type of stuff, is it possible that Jayapal and the Progressive Caucus might vote against that agenda?
I don't think so. I think that the key here will be that the negotiations are heading to a point where the progressives could feel pretty confident and comfortable that it's going to be something that they like, and then they would vote for infrastructure. I think now there's going to be no Republicans, or maybe a handful of Republicans, who vote for infrastructure. But I think that people are beginning to see that, like, the president's agenda, this is the president's agenda, and we need to give it to him. That's just kind of what I think at this moment. I think that's the general vibe.
How involved is Biden, the president, on all of this? Because we were hearing things from members saying that they wanted him to get more involved and try and, like you said, put in some elbow grease. But it seems in the last couple of days he's gotten more hands-on with the negotiations. Is that what you're hearing from people?
Yeah, he's definitely way more hands-on than he was a couple weeks ago. He had breakfast with Pelosi this morning and Schumer by Zoom, Pelosi in person, Schumer by Zoom. I think he's much more involved than he has been in the past. He's clearly been talking to Manchin and Sinema I don't know about daily, but pretty damn close to daily. So yeah, I really do think that he's getting very involved. And, at a certain level, the criticism of him being not involved, I think, is unfair because he has to be involved in a lot, and to expect him to have kind of the depth of knowledge to track negotiations minute by minute is tough. Although, listen, I've been critical of Trump, and I was critical of Trump, and have been critical of Biden for the things that I'm saying that now other people shouldn't be critical of him for. I think the criticism is a little bit unfair.
Yeah. Is there I know among progressives and other Democrats in the House too, there's an anger at Manchin and Sinema right now over blocking the 3.5 trillion. Is that coming from the Biden White House as well? Because that town hall last night, he seemed pretty, pretty calmly like that and confident that he's going to get this done. But is there behind closed doors, is this a lot more tense between these two?
That's a good question. So yes and no. I think, and we say this a lot, since you're a reader, you probably have heard this. Certainly my colleague sitting next to me has heard this a lot. You have to deal with the government you have, not the government you want. and I there's nothing you could do that is going to make Joe Manchin comfortable with $3.5 trillion. Unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. And so you could be upset about it, or you could accept the reality and move from there. And I think the White House has accepted the reality that Manchin is who he is, Sinema is who she is, and they have to take what they could try to convince them. It's not going to work. They have to take what they have, and they have to move forward. So I think that's kind of the reality.
On that note, though, the headline out of last night, one of the major headlines that I saw, and I watched the town hall, was that Biden talked about being open to dropping the filibuster.
Yeah, Biden doesn't have a vote, so
right.
He could be open to it. I don't really care if he's open to it or not.
Right.
I mean, I think it's fine that he's open to it, but he doesn't have a vote. Joe Manchin has been abundantly clear that he's not interested in blowing up the filibuster. So being open to it is fine. Manchin and Sinema, what I think most people don't understand is that Manchin and Sinema, or at least Manchin, let's just leave Sinema aside for a second, but Manchin benefits in a state like West Virginia from being against the president on a lot of issues. He just benefits. He benefits. I'm not sure Sinema does. We'll have to see about that. She's susceptible to a primary. There's all sorts of things that could, I don't know how that's going to play out. I think a lot of people think that she's misjudging the political mandate that she has or doesn't have in this case. But I don't put a lot of stock in Biden's view on the filibuster. I just don't.
Yeah. And
because what do you expect? I was just talking to a colleague of mine today. What do you not you, but what does one expect here, right? So they're going to be asked to take a really tough vote on this package, which they're going to like, but they're going to have problems with at some point in the next 2 months, and then they're going to turn around and blow up the filibuster. I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me.
No. A lot of the criticism of Sinema has been that she's not really publicly explaining what she actually wants out of the bill. She had that exchange with reporters where she said, "Where are you? I'm in the Senate. I'm over by the elevators." Do you guys know, is she telling you what she wants, or is there a disconnect between what we know as the public and what she's negotiating about behind closed doors?
Well, let me tell you this. Anything that I know, for the most part, I tell my readers. So I'm not in the business of retaining information for just the retaining information's sake. And I know you know that. I'm just saying, I don't know much more than you at this point. I would defer to, I think she's pretty cagey. I mean, there was an incident a couple months ago. I asked her people in July whether she was against new taxes, Sinema, and they said that wasn't her position. They said I asked. Now they've told me I've asked the question wrong. But I mean, I think, to be honest with you, that she's probably letting her feelings and views be known to the White House. I think she is, but I think we don't know a lot of what she believes. I think that's fair to say.
Right. Let's move on to January 6th.
Sure.
I watched that happen on TV because I was, here at home.
Yep.
You were there. You were in the
Yep.
Capitol. I was following your Twitter feed closely as that was happening. You were furious and
Yep.
scared, rightly so. If you could, and not to make you relive it, but
No,
if you
it's
could talk
okay.
a little bit about your personal experiences on that day, because you were, you were there. You were at the Capitol.
Yeah, I was in this room actually, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it was scary. I mean, this is a place I've been working for almost 12 years, and 11 and change years, and it was unsettling to see that this could happen. Not necessarily what was happening, but the fact that we were so vulnerable for people who not only hate the government but hate the press, probably in equal measure. I would say that I was angry. I was angry at the people who were belittling it, who didn't know what was going on. Some people in the White House who have heard from me since then and have apologized, many of them since then, for their reaction that day. At least one or two people. Now, I think that that all said, yeah, it's a new world up here. I mean, there's a lot of hatred in the Capitol, I think, in a way that we didn't necessarily know or see before. So yeah, that's my reflection from that. I don't know if I have any others. I mean, we had people banging on our doors, and I mean, luckily nothing happened to any of us. A colleague of mine, someone who's a photographer for the New York Times, was I don't know if you'd say beaten, but was definitely hurt and thrown to the ground. So yeah, it was unnerving. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking, I want to touch on actually the anger at the Capitol because you brought that up.
Yeah.
How much attention is too much attention to pay to Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, the people that everybody loves to talk about, but you do have to cover the crazy things that they're saying, but also how much is too much?
We have a different theory on this, I'd say, and our theory is that we cover them when they matter to things that our readership would care about. We're not going to get into Marjorie Taylor Greene having a shouting match with someone on the House floor, which happened yesterday. Yeah. It happened to be that my colleagues here, Max and Christian, were outside on the steps when Marjorie Taylor Greene was shouting at the back of a press conference. Yeah. And I believe we did write something about that, right?
We did.
I don't know that I don't think we wrote about it in any great detail, but our mandate, and I think, like, we feel very strongly about this, and John Bresnan, my colleague, and Anna Palmer, and I, and now by extension, Max and Christian, we feel very strongly that, like, our mission is to tell people what matters among the people who matter. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is a backbench member of the House minority.
Yeah.
And to the extent she matters for Congress, we will cover her. To the extent she matters, speaking of a larger dynamic in the Republican Party, we'll cover her. I'm not going to get too much into Marjorie Taylor Greene reportage on a daily basis. I think it's fair. I mean, we talk to her if we have to, but we're a small. I would put it this way: we're a small team, and we try to allocate our resources with the best way we can. And that's not dealing with lunacy sometimes.
Believe it or not, there's still about 15 minutes left of that interview that I left on the cutting room floor, but we're not going to be keeping it from you for long. Part 2 of my interview with Jake Sherman will be out later this month as a continued fundraiser for the Lyme for Luke Pediatric Cancer Fund. So please subscribe so you'll be notified when that comes out. When we come back, I'll interview County Executive Anthony Picenti. Don't go anywhere.